It's definitely going to be an exciting year. Now let's just jump right in and start to announce some of the films. We're thrilled to be presenting the following titles in the special presentations program. Ning Hao's Breakup Buddies, Philippe Falardeau's The Good Lie, starring Reese Witherspoon and Corey Stoll, Christian Petzold's Phoenix, starring Nina Haas, Chris Rock's Top 5, starring Rosario Dawson and Chris Rock, and Noah Baumbach's While We're Young, starring Amanda Seyfried, Adam Driver, Ben Stiller, and Naomi Watts.
And we're very pleased that our gala program will include David Dobkin's The Judge, starring Robert Downey Jr. and Robert Duvall, Francois Ozon's The New Girlfriend, starring Romain Duris and Anaïs de Moustier, and Lona Scherfig's The Riot Club.
The special presentations program will also include Ramin Barani's 99 Homes, starring Andrew Garfield and Michael Shannon, Suzanne Bier's The Second Chance, starring Nikolai Coster-Waldau, Saurik Andresan's American Heist, starring Adrian Brody and Hayden Christensen, Chris Evans' Before We Go, Daniel Barnes's Cake, starring Jennifer Aniston and Anna Kendrick.
Jang Yimou's Coming Home, starring Gong Li, Peter Ho-sun Chan's Dearest, Toa Fraser's The Deadlands, Michael R. Roscom's The Drop, starring Tom Hardy and Noomi Rapace, Mia Hansen-Love's Eden,
David Olhoffen's Far From Men, starring Viggo Mortensen, Ruben Östlund's Force Majeure, Brigitte Valnier's The Gate, Andrew Nichols' Good Kill, starring Ethan Hawke and January Jones, Peter Chesham's Hector and the Search for Happiness, starring Simon Pegg and Rosamund Pike.
Barry Levinson's The Humbling, starring Al Pacino and Greta Gerwig, Saverio Costanzo's Hungry Hearts, starring Adam Driver, Morton Tildom's The Imitation Game, starring Benedict Cumberbatch, Salma Hayek and Liam Neeson in Khalil Gibran's The Prophet, Daniel Barber's The Keeping Room, starring Britt Marling and Haley Steinfeld, Richard Lagravenese's The Last 5 Years, starring Anna Kendrick,
Isabel Kershets' Learning to Drive, starring Patricia Clarkson and Ben Kingsley, Bill Poland's Love and Mercy, starring Paul Dano and John Cusack, David Gordon Green's Manglehorn, starring Al Pacino and Holly Hunter, Omung Kumar's Mary Kom, starring Priyanka Chopra, Jason Reitman's Men, Women, and Children, starring Jennifer Garner and Adam Sandler, Liv Ullmann's Miss Julie, starring Jessica Chastain and Colin Farrell, Mike Leigh's Mr. Turner, starring Timothy Spall,
Israel Horowitz's My Old Lady, starring Maggie Smith, Kevin Kline, and Kristen Scott Thomas, Hal Hartley's Ned Rifle, Dan Gilroy's Nightcrawler, starring Jake Gyllenhaal and Rene Russo, Abel Ferrara's Pasolini, starring Willem Dafoe, Jean-Baptiste Leonetti's The Reach, starring Michael Douglas and Jeremy Irvin, Wang Xiaoshui's Red Amnesia,
Laurent Cantet's Return to Ithaca, Jon Stewart's Rosewater, starring Gael Garcia Bernal, Richard Glasser and Wash Westmoreland's Still Alice, starring Julianne Moore and Kristen Stewart, James Marsh's The Theory of Everything, starring Eddie Redmayne and Felicity Jones, Oren Moverman's Time Out of Mind, starring Richard Gere, Damon Chazelle's Whiplash, and Damien Safran's Wild Tales, starring Ricardo Darín.
You know, it's one thing to read a list of titles, but once you start to see the images, I get excited all over again. And we've seen the movies. You know, we're thrilled to announce that our galas at Roy Thompson Hall will include the following: Mike Binder's Black and White, starring Kevin Costner, Octavia Spencer, and Anthony Mackie; Antoine Fuqua's The Equalizer, starring Denzel Washington and Chloe Grace Moretz; Bennett Miller's Foxcatcher, starring Steve Carell, Channing Tatum, and Mark Ruffalo; Shim Sung-bo's Heimu, starring Kim Yoon-seok and Yu Chun;
David Cronenberg's Maps to the Stars, starring Julianne Moore, Mia Wasikowski, and Robert Pattinson; Edward Zwick's Pawn Sacrifice, starring Tobey Maguire and Liev Schreiber; Olivier Nakache and Eric Toledano's Samba, starring Omar Sy and Charlotte Gainsbourg; Sean Levy's This Is Where I Leave You, starring Jason Bateman, Tina Fey, and Jane Fonda; and Jean-Marc Vallet's Wild, starring Reese Witherspoon.
We have one more very special gala we would like to share with you this morning, our closing night film. Alan Rickman's visually stunning A Little Chaos, starring Kate Winslet, Alan Rickman, and Stanley Tucci. In the film, a landscape gardener with a taste for the unconventional is invited to design one of the fountains at the Palace of Versailles. As she battles with the weather, the perilous rivalries at the court of Louis XIV, and her own private demons, she finds herself drawn closer to the formality and enigma of the architect who hired her. On the selection of his film for closing night at this year's festival, Rickman had this to say: "It's a great privilege for A Little Chaos to have its world premiere in Toronto and for it to be given the festival's closing night gala, but it is also a personal pleasure. I have filmed in this city, visited often, and some of my closest friends live there. It will be like coming home." We're shaking things up this year for our closing night. Following the Roy Thompson Hall screening of A Little Chaos, our closing night party is moving to Toronto's historic Arcadian Court.
So there you have it, our first announcement of titles for the 2014 festival. We'll continue to make announcements throughout the summer.